The world is holding its breath ahead of Trump's return to the White House. Biden delivered a farewell address to the nation, warning Americans against forming a super-rich oligarch class, calling on legislators to amend the U.S. Constitution to end immunity for all presidents. But Trump's shadow is already creeping over Capitol Hill, and his global influence is already being felt in world politics. Trump's entourage attributes his first victories to him even before he came to power. They say that it was Trump who influenced the signing of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. But there is a nuance: without government approval, it will not come into force, and such approval is currently being postponed until Saturday evening at the earliest. It is also clear that Trump is moving away from his former brave populist rhetoric on the issue of ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. He is no longer talking about 3 months, but 6 months or more. The ghosts of hope are dissolving on the horizon. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited Kiev on Thursday and signed an agreement with Zelensky on a 100-year partnership and strengthening military ties amid fears that the US will begin to curtail its support under Trump. In parallel, Britain and France are negotiating the cooperation of their troops in the matter of guaranteed protection of Ukraine after the end of hostilities. Britain may also deploy its military bases on Ukrainian territory. But few believe in a truce yet. Trump's magic is not limitless, and Putin is demanding too much. To begin with, the Kremlin said that Trump should be the first to call Putin like a groom to a bald object of desire. To enhance the intimidating effect, Putin issued a decree for the first time in 20 years calling up citizens in the reserves for military training. And his turtle-like deputy Zhuravlev announced the need to prepare for a major war with the West. The head of the SVR, Narishin, burped that it is scary to go to Europe because of the number of perverts that have proliferated there. That is, propaganda pumping is going on at all levels. Even school children are being taught to control drones to fight Western armored vehicles. The Kremlin has moved to total militarization, demonstrating the presence of additional forces to continue the war and readiness for a general call-up for the last existential battle. And not only with Ukraine, but with the collective West. Trump's nominee for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has called for tougher sanctions against Russia to force Putin to negotiate on Ukraine. He called the sanctions imposed by the Biden administration not comprehensive enough and said that the war in Ukraine is one of the greatest tragedies of his life, and he wants to end it as soon as possible, playing any role in it, at least as the head of the Treasury, if he is confirmed. But how will the US force Putin to sit at the negotiating table when he demands that Ukraine completely abandon its plans to join NATO and move the alliance away from the borders with Russia? He wants to push NATO back to the borders of 40 years ago, returning the cave to the influence of Soviet times. To satisfy this desire, Finland, Poland, and the Baltic states would have to be excluded from NATO, which is completely impossible, but the bald man does not care about reality. He is not at all embarrassed by the fact that the loss of Syria has resulted in the loss of former influence in Africa, and now the president of the Central African Republic Touadera has personally come to him to ask Putlo to remove the Wagner PMC thugs from his country. Moscow's global image has been undermined, but the Tsar remains unperturbed, signing a strategic partnership agreement with Iranian President Pezeshkian on Friday, despite Tehran's refusal to recognize the occupied territories of Ukraine, including annexed Crimea, as Russian. As the former leader of the Nashists, the Liberty thug Vaska Yarkomenko frankly says, Putin simply does not know where he is leading the country, he can do nothing, and his advisors live in outer space. Against the backdrop of hybrid military threats emanating from Russia, the Estonian Defense Ministry has prepared corresponding amendments to the laws allowing the use of force in response to Russian actions in the Baltic Sea. After the cases of deliberate damage to cables in the Baltic Sea, the actions of the country's targets of hybrid attacks will become more active, up to the use of force by the military. Putin's cave always has 3 phases of war: propaganda, hybrid and real. In the war with Europe, we are witnessing the second phase. Almost 3 years ago, on February 25, 2022, the great American director David Lynch said, "Right now, Mr. Putin, you are sowing death and destruction. And it is your fault. The Ukrainians did not attack your country. You are attacking it now. And all this death and destruction will come back to you." On Thursday, David Lynch died, but Putin did not. Probably because it is not enough to put Putin alone in a coffin. The entire Bolshevik Russian world must be buried with him.